So today I'm going to talk about BPMN, CMMN, and DMN, and I'm going to try to do it very differently and at a totally different level than what you've done today. I know the day's been long. There's only so many boxes and links you can see in one day, and we tend to get quite geeky. So sorry, we apologize, or you may be happy about that. How many people know about BPMN? Can I show? Okay. How many people actually uses BPMN? Okay, quite a few people. How many people know about CMMN? Okay, few less. How many people actually uses CMMN? Nobody. How many people know about DMN? Okay, few people. Okay, so I'm within a BPMN crowd, so that's good. So what I'd like to talk to you today is a bigger context. I'm going to come at this completely from a business point of view. How many people are from IT? Everybody? How many people are architects? Just about everybody. Okay. So it's going to be the wrong presentation? No, not quite. But I'm going to be looking at this very much more from a business perspective than a technological perspective, because I think that's where these standards bring value. It's in building that bridge between IT and business. So it's here, can you see it? I would claim that traditional business do not pay enough attention at how drastically things are changing around them. And for that, they need to look at different way of engaging their customers, which may mean changing their business model. And that's true of just about every industry. So we hear a lot about the digital revolution, digital transformation, and all those buzzwords. But fundamentally, this is all fueled by very rapid technology adoption, but mostly by the changing behavior of customers. People want to consume your service and your products in a totally different way. The old way is not good enough for them anymore. They're well informed, they're connected, they want to have access to things, and they want it now. I have 4 kids. Believe me, they want everything now. And there's also increasing competition with the global context of the economy. So we're living a lot of paradigm shifts in many industries, and I would claim that no industry will be left aside. Every single industry will eventually be completely shifted in its paradigm. So we've seen the shift from music. Some of you maybe, like me, seen music progress from the old days all the way to the consumption of music, streaming music, or for those of you that are from Montreal, La Presse, from the old La Presse printed to the web La Presse site to now La Presse Plus. I'm assuming Ottawa is going through the same. In Montreal, we had the big fight with Uber, and we're still fighting Uber, and nobody knows what's going to happen, but it's happening right now. So we've seen. But what's really particular is that it's not just newcomer to the market, is that these newcomer totally changed the business model, totally changed the way the interaction, the service, and the product is delivered to their consumers. And that's a major change, and that's what you have to pay attention to. But being digital doesn't mean putting more technology in the stack. So be very mindful not to confuse digital transformation with an increased technology spending. I know that the list at the bottom is the popular list now, whether it's cloud or social or semantic technology and AI. If you have executive in your group, you know, and the good old management by magazine, they get on a flight, they see AI, they come back and we need AI. So that's something, and that's correct. We need to follow through with the technology, but we got to remember that the organization is fundamentally process-centric, customer-centric, knowledge-centric, and innovation-centric. And those 4 pillars are what you need to pay attention from a business point of view. And I would argue that we're transitioning from an era of focus on improvement, where improvement is about doing the same thing but better, and we're progressing through that layers of innovating by doing new things or transforming by doing new things that make the old way completely obsolete, and that's where that transformation. So I connotate transformation to the transformation of the business model, not just the technology and the environment. So talking about the improvement era, I don't know if, do any of you know about the Devil's Quadrant? What's on the screen there? Sometimes referred to the Devil's Quadrant, which is the notion that if you're optimizing quality, you're probably going to incur some costs. And if you're optimizing for value, it's probably going to take more time. And basically, you have kind of a towel that people are pulling, but if you pull on one end, it brings the other end in, and you have these different things going. So if we look at the improvement era that we've been living with now, so we have the Six Sigma movement, which has been very much focused in terms of improving the quality in the production and the steadiness of production. So we're looking at improving time and quality, which was the major pull on that side from the Six Sigma mentality that's still quite popular nowadays. Then we have the lean movement. The lean movement is looking at removing waste, therefore generating more value and really reducing costs. So it's pulling on that towel towards value and cost. Therefore, I would argue that Lean Six Sigma is an oxymoron. And that's why most Lean Six Sigma projects are pretty much stay at the same space, because they're pulling on the same towel from two totally different directions. Now, the workflow or the structured workflow group, so we've been working at workflow and business process probably since the early 90s. We've started working on that. We had at the Workflow Management Coalition, we started with the first standard, XPDL. I was co-editor of XPDL in those days. And the workflow movement and the early business process movement were more focused on the efficiency side. So we were pulling on reducing time and costs. So it was a lot about cost reduction, standardizing the way we do things so we can reduce time and cost. And then came a movement which was more about unstructured workflow, or what we heard about knowledge worker, which was in supporting the more ad hoc type of business work within the organization. And then the focus is more on providing more quality and value to the end user. So that's the era that I would argue that we're slowly transitioning from. And what are we transitioning from and to is, so if we put this on two axes, so value to the business and value to the customer, we've been focusing on the improvement, which was really about operational processes, which was a lot of value to the organization, but the value to the customer was a side effect. You know, we would sell it by saying, well, if our processes are more rapid, if our processes are better, then the customer gets the benefit. But it's a side effect. It's not direct value we're generating for the customer. When we look at the new movement of outside-in view, or the customer-centric and customer centricity perspective, we're focusing more on offering new and innovative way of interacting. That's where you get a lot of the multimodal way of connecting with the organization, and we're offering different customer experience. Sometimes those are much more focused on providing value to the customer and their experience, as opposed to the internal organization. And when we're looking at really doing a transformation, the focus is then on both the value to the organization and the value to the customer by providing new business model, new ways of engaging, and more efficient way of doing it. So a little bit about government. I've been asked to put that a bit in the context of government, and I don't have enough knowledge to really put it in your real context. So, of course, the chances of some startup coming and disrupting the government, it's probably a low probability. Nevertheless, I think there's a lot of value that a government or a government agency can provide to its constituency by offering new and better way of engaging with their customer and their consumer, and offering them more efficient ways. So just general sense of the different services. We naturally have the government to citizen services or aspect of the business. We have the government to business also, that's quite an important element. Government to government, shared services and different elements. And we have the government to employee. So these are all areas of business that the standards we're talking about can provide value. So it's more of a business look at these aspects rather than an information technology look at all this. So some potential transformation for government, e-government, government business improvement and transformation, public administration, shared services, and services to the citizen and businesses. So I did some research and I was trying to find some initiative within the Government of Canada's website to find initiatives that were related to transformation and improvement. And I stumbled upon one, which was the Information Management and Information Technology Plan for 2017 and 21. And so I decided to do a word cloud of the document to see what it was about, because I'm lazy, I don't want to read that long document. And this is what you get. So whatever they say in terms of images and direction, this is what they're saying in words. So we can see it's a lot about open and service. Luckily for us, because I'm Canadian, Canada and Canadian comes up pretty good. But I was very interested in seeing that processes is also a big part of what comes out in there. So where do BPMN, CMMN, and DMN fit in the big picture? So basically, if you look at the alignment from strategy to operation and from the outside-in view to the inside-out view, where on the strategic side, you'll have things like business motivation and business model canvas and notions of business strategy. On the outside-in, you'll have empathy maps, customer journey map. And the inside out, you'll look at probably balanced scorecard and KPIs type of measures. And usually we have capabilities at the middle as the linchpin. On the right side, we have the operational aspect. And that's where BPMN, CMMN, and DMN come into play. It's that right-hand side of this alignment. So we've seen, and you've seen during the day, different frameworks, different approach to create some alignment and some analysis of the structure. And I'm going to talk about that aspect, which is usually more living on the bridge between IT and business. So the holy grail of all your operation is basically to have something that is very malleable in terms of operation so that you can improve your agility for internally, but more importantly, your agility to support your consumer. So we're looking at simpler, more agile, smarter types of operation. So the characteristic that we're going to be looking in terms of something that is agile, something that is adaptive, leveraging knowledge worker, which is a big part of what government does. Smart and intelligent, knowledge focused, leveraging business goal and business decision and business rule management. Contextual, information focused, leveraging all the business events that are happening within that context. So we've seen a transition over time on how we create application and interaction with our customer and consumer. We started extracting different concern that had their own life cycle outside of our application. We started with data, with database management systems. We then moved into the 90s of moving processes out, and late 90s and still today, we're moving to remove the rules out of these applications so we can manage these life cycles of these entities separately. And with the intention of providing better ways of managing the agile and rapid change of these things, but also for giving business back their control. And so we have the notion of processes, which is about taking steps to achieve the desired outcome in the organization. We have the notion of case, which is about managing a context for a desired outcome. And we have the notion of decision, which is deciding while achieving the desired outcome. And here, within OMG and within DMN, we're considering deciding as an activity. So process management is really a discipline approach. So the challenge we have at some point is that BPM, business process management, means many things to many people. It could be the practice, it could be the language, it could be the automation and the system, but fundamentally, it's a discipline approach to allow the organization to become more efficient. Case management is to address the paradigm shift where we're giving control to the knowledge worker. So rather than specifying what needs to be done and how things needs to be done, we're providing a frame, a context to our knowledge worker for them to decide what's the best next event or what's the best next action, in the context of the events that are happening with the particular case. And then deciding is about increasing the agility of the organization and the adaptability by providing the decision requirement, so we can look at what information, what knowledge is required to make the decision, and the logic to achieve that decision. So at OMG, we have 3 standards: BPMN, CMMN, and DMN: business process model and notation, case management model and notation, decision model of notation. We often refer to them as the triple crown of business process improvement. So what is BPMN? So can you all please stand up? Please, everybody stand up. It's been a long day. You need to move. Okay, so I'm gonna teach you one thing. It's the only thing you'll remember from my presentation. Okay, you won't remember anything else, but you'll remember that. So from a BPMN perspective, a process is very simple. It's a triggering event, everybody with me? Triggering event, a series of activity, and different outcomes. Okay, all together. A process is triggering event, collection of activities, different outcome. I guarantee you, you will remember that part. Okay, thank you. So very simplistically, if you're discussing with the business people in your organization, and there's always this kind of de-scoping thing about a process, what it means really, where do process, look for the triggering event. What's the series of activities that will take you to your different outcomes? So BPMN is the business process model and notation. It's an OMG standard. It's a universal graphical notation for drawing business processes. That's the core of it. But it also provides unique semantic. That is, each shape has only one meaning, and each shape will behave in one very specific way. So whenever I define things using this shape, it means something very concrete. It means how it will happen. In fact, we can use a BPMN diagram, a BPMN process that is fully specified to automate the process. So it becomes the actual code. So a lot of time with these standards, we say the model are the requirement, the model are the documentation, the model is the code, because the model is executable. BPMN 2 is the current version. It is also an ISO standard. And in particular, BPMN became an ISO standard because quite a few countries wanted to adopt BPMN. In fact, in Japan, every single government request for proposal or bids need to come in with a BPMN diagram explaining the process context. In Switzerland, BPMN is used to document all the operation of the government and is standardized. Germany is doing the same. So a lot and more countries are adopting BPMN as a way to specify requirement, context, and the way things are being done. So BPMN, I won't spend too much time on it because most everybody seems to know what it is. So there are basically 3 shapes in BPMN. That's all. Although some people will say it's very complicated, there's 3 shapes. Whenever you see a circle in BPMN, we mean an event. Whenever you see a rectangle with rounded corner, we mean an activity. And whenever you see a diamond, we mean a gateway. It's not a decision, it's a branching moment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. So it's a gateway. And then we have a sequence flow that moves you through these shapes. So here I have a very simple example. And now we use these 3 or 4 basic shapes. By changing their visualization or markings, we can be more precise about what it means. So for example, a circle with a thin line means a start event. It's my trigger. That's what triggers this process. The rounded rectangle means an activity. The little gears here mean this is a service activity. In this case, a service task, because I'm at the lowest level. Again, here I have another activity, and the little table shape here means it's a decision or a business rule activity. So right away, with the simple shape, I can specify the information, the behavior, and what's in there. And we have all kinds of hidden attributes where we can add more and more detail, all the way to making it executable. But it can be used just to convey the information. Now, once I've done my decision, based on the result of that decision, I can branch. And the gateway doesn't have any semantic in BPMN. That's what a lot of people confuse, because they think this is the decision. But the gateway is really just a placeholder for the marker, so I know what behavior the gate is playing. This is an exclusive gateway. So based on the decision here, or the information that I've collected before, I will branch on that data exclusively to one or the other. Here I have a case task, so it's a task that will call a case that I need to manage. Here I have a circle with double line. That's an intermediate event. Circle always means event. Double line means intermediate event. Now, intermediate event is so complicated, it's basically an event between the start and the end of it. Did you get it? Okay. So that's all it is. An intermediate event is nothing more than an event that happens during the process. A thick line circle, again, a circle is an event, is an end event. So here I have the core of BPMN. Now, we have other elements, so we'll have a pool to represent a participant, and then I have external participants with whom I can actually interact with message flow. So whenever the marker, so here the intermediate event is looking for a message, whenever the marker is clear, it means it's a catching moment. I'm receiving something. Whenever the marker is dark, it means it's a throwing moment. I'm sending something or I'm doing something. So that's how we look at BPMN, and then we have the notion of data objects that are used as input, and when we put a little plus at the bottom, that means that there's details hidden behind that shape. But for the purpose of this diagram, it's not important. Most software tool, most tool vendor will offer that when you click on that, it takes you to the detail of the process. So BPMN is that simple. Now, what's very powerful about BPMN is that business user can readily understand a diagram. It's almost automatic. They'll start asking about what this little shape means and things like that, but they'll understand the logic. And we've done a lot of research in the past few years that showed that if you ask someone, anybody, a housewife or construction worker, and if you do a survey and you ask people to explain to them, how do I get something done? You'll get 3 possible answers. They'll either draw some kind of a flow chart on a piece of paper or napkin to show you how you get it done. They'll give you a to-do list First you do that, then you do that, then you do that. Or they'll draw some kind of story with pictures of stickman scenarios. Say, well, you walk to the airport, then you jump on the taxi, and all this. So the point here is that this flow charting of the ideas and how things get done is a very natural thing for everybody. It's an abstraction that pretty much all humans pick up very rapidly. So it's a powerful tool to communicate with business for you in IT. So what is CMMN? Don't worry, there's no dance for CMMN. I have to invent one, I guess. CMMN is the case management and model notation. It came a little bit later. Current version is version 1.1. And CMMN is basically meant to address a situation where it's not really possible for me to prescribe how things should happen. So if you notice in BPMN, I'm prescribing here, as soon as this event happens, first do this task. When this task complete, then do this task. Then based on that decision, do this next task or this next task. I'm prescribing what should happen in what order and how it should happen. But often there's a situation where I cannot do that. We needed more flexibility, still offering scaffolding and information and structure, but without prescribing how things should get done. You can think in a medical emergency situation, a police investigation. It's hard to tell when a clue is going to come in and what we should do about it. So that's why CMMN was created. It's again, same notion, graphical notation, that we can define very clearly what should happen, how it should happen, unique behavior for all the shapes, and potentially executable if you go all the way into the specification. So CMMN, again, just a few shapes. The double circle is what we call an event listener. So it's a moment, a business moment I'm waiting for. And we have the little dog-eared document, which is a case file item. And then we have the diamond shape, which are the conditions, and the rounded rectangle means an actual task or activity. So it's very similar to BPMN in terms of what the shapes mean. The difference is that in CMMN, the folder shape here is providing me a context. And within this context, so here I have my context of the case, I want to manage the events that are happening. And these events can happen in any order, any way. And we use basically what we call an event condition action semantic. So basically when the event happens, if this condition is met, then do this action. And the flexibility of CMMN is that you don't have to have the event, the condition, and the action. It can be just condition action or just action. So we have a full flexibility of the ECA declarative statement. So basically if I go here, I have, as soon as a user requests it, on that event, terminate the case. So basically this says, at any time while the case is active, if the customer requests it, I close the case. Now, if you've done BPMN before, you know that in order to do that, what would happen? I would have exception path at every single activities so that I can capture the fact that at any single moment, the user can tell me to stop. So you then start creating this spaghetti code in your BPMN about how to deal with these events that happen ad hocly at any time. Again, here we have the notion of a milestone. So what this says here, if this milestone is achieved, and, so the branching of the end here, this case file item is present, then close the file. For example, if the car is repaired and the invoice been generated, close the case. So it's a very declarative approach. So you're within a context, specifying what happens. So here what I have is on a particular time, if this condition is met, then do this task. And then CMMN has something that is very powerful. We have the notion of discretionary activities. So the dashed line here around these activities are what we call discretionary tasks. Discretionary tasks are basically tasks that are available to the knowledge worker at runtime to basically insert and do. So CMMN separate design time and runtime, where at design time we're saying here's what should happen, but we leave all kinds of discretionary allowance to the knowledge worker so that when he's facing the case and he's dealing with the case, he reacts to the event, and he also have discretionary tasks that may appear within a certain context. So this little table here, we call a planning table here, it says that while I'm in the context of doing this task here, these two discretionary tasks are going to be available to me. Where this one here, this discretionary task is within the context of this planning table, means that whenever I'm working on this case, this discretionary task is available to me all the time. And we can have decision, the little exclamation mark or bang for computer scientists means that it's a required task. I mean, this absolutely needs to be done before we close the case. So that's all CMMN is. And you can imagine scenarios where you would want to define this drawing that I have there in BPMN. I can guarantee you would be possible, but it would be one hell of a spaghetti mess. So we also have DMN. And what is DMN? Is the decision model and notation. Again, an OMG standard. It's in version 1.2. We actually, Friday it will be officially adopted. We just submitted it last March. It's in final adoption, so it's the official version that's live as of this meeting. And basically, DMN is a common meta model for capturing decision. And basically, we have two sides to it. We can draw the requirements for making the decision, so we can basically visually draw the requirement, and we can also specify the logic to execute that decision. Again, very similar idea, a few simple shapes. The square rectangle is a decision. This elliptic shape is an input. And basically, then I have different things. So what this is saying is this: in order for me to achieve decision one, my information requirement, which are these arrow, I need this input data 3, plus I need the result of decision 2. In order to make decision 2, I need this input data 1 and input data 2. And that way, I can structure all the requirement to achieve the decision in terms of data and sub-decision. So it's a divide and conquer approach to deciding. And then we have the notion of a business knowledge model, which is an external source of knowledge that I can invoke. So this says really, decision one has these information requirement plus needs to invoke this external knowledge. And then we have this shape here, which is what we call a knowledge source. That's basically an artifact saying the evidence or the authority under which this information or this decision is made. So this can be a policy, this could be a statement of law, this can be a rule, it can be different things that specify under that authority. So that, with that diagram, we call it decision requirement diagram, I can very clearly specify what you need in terms of information, in terms of knowledge to achieve a specific decision. Plus, DMN offers another aspect, which is the possibility of specifying the logic with which we make the decision. And for that, we have an expression language that's called FEEL, Friendly Enough Expression Language. It's an expression language that's very similar to what you find in the Excel expression language. And the idea, and one visualization that we use is decision table to make things simple. So here, I have a decision table, and basically a decision table is quite simple. Every column is an input, so I have input 1, input 2, and then double line, and on the other side of the double line I have my answer for the decision, and each row is a rule. So row 1 says if input 1 is true and input 2 is true, then my answer is true. And rule 3 says if input 1 is false, input 2 is true, then my answer is true. And basically, it's that simple. It's a media through which business people can very easily express the logic. Now, you can use BPMN, CMMN, and DMN as requirement specification language where business will provide you with a very precise specification. Now, the benefit is that it's not just word, it's actually a structure that you're provided. You're provided also with behavior. So you know what the behavior, the expected behavior is. And if you augment that and you have the infrastructure for executing it, you can even execute that directly on a platform. And so the Triple Crown is by associating these three standards together. So within a process, I can have an activity that calls a case. Then I open the case. I'm running this case. While I'm in this case, I may have a decision that will be specified in DMN. Or within my process, I can get a decision that will be specified in DMN. So they're complementary to one another to help you better specify how things should get done and document this in a very precise way. So let me show you a little bit more what I mean by that. So what I have here is is a BPMN diagram that we call a collaboration diagram. So my process of interest is this one here, and then I have all the other participants. So this is my customer support model. Can you guys read this? Okay. So this is my customer support model. So the first thing that happened, I wait for a message from my customer. It goes to customer support. My mouse is not behaving. It goes to customer support. Once I receive that note, it goes to the activity, which is to get the issue description from the customer. For example, if I'm at design time, here's a mock-up of the information screen that would be shown to the person. Once I get the information, then based on that information, maybe I want to escalate this. So I get into a sub-process of two activities. The first thing that I do is I inform the customer that I'm escalating this. Then I send a message to my second line. During that time, I'm waiting. Let's assume that second line can actually answer this problem. I could have escalated that a few levels if I want. Then I get my answer back. I provide the answer back to the customer. Was the solution effective or not? If it's not, I loop back here. So let's say it's not. I loop back here. I'll just skip that. So for example, let's say I'm in the context, this is customer support, but it's customer support in the context of a car rental company that we call EU Rent. It's a fictitious car rental company. And my customer is stuck on the roadside. So it's very hard for me to write a BPMN process of what to do to deal with somebody that's stuck on the roadside. I have no clue what's going on, and I have no clue how things are going to emerge. So then what I'll do is I'll open a case. So roadside assistance case. This will take me into my roadside assistance case. So now I'm within my roadside case, and many different events can happen within my context. I can receive an issue report. The customer can ask to dismiss. There's different repairs that can be done. And you can see that as the caseworker, I have a discretionary stage here, which is to replace the car. So that means that at any time during that case, at my discretion as the caseworker, I can decide to initiate the work to change the car, replace the car. Now, these events can happen in any kind of order. So for example, I receive the issue report, which starts an activity there. And at the same time that I receive the issue report, I also get the request for the car location repair. Let's say it's a changing tire problem. Here's a video on how to change a tire on the roadside. This is complete, which allows me to complete this stage. And then suddenly I get the collision report. And the collision report here, if you notice, was starting a decision on how we will calculate the collision charge. So now in DMN, the decision of how we're going to split the cost of the car damage is based on 3 inputs: the responsibility, the damage type, and the membership level. So if I run this here, we said it's a tire problem. Let's say my member is a silver member, and the driver was responsible because he hit the curb. So I run this, and then I get the decision that EU Rent, the rental company, will pay 20%, and the renter will pay 80%. Well, I can then go into the logic, click here, and I can see exactly which rule fired that led me to that result. So here, the first rule, if we read the first row together, it says, if the member is gold, I don't care who's responsible, I don't care what the damage type is, we, EU Rent, will pay 100%. But if you're silver, depending if it's third party or the driver that's responsible, and depending on the type of damage, we will split the cost differently. Now you can see, now here I ran it in an automated way, but you can see this just as pure documentation. Then you can ensure that decisions are always based on the same proper information requirement and that the decision making is very specific. Now we can add rules and rows to this, and we can add different things, so this can grow, but at any moment in time, we can very clearly specify how we make that decision. So coming out of here, so now I had done this and do a few things in the activities, and you can see here, it keeps a trace of what gets done, but you can see I can change the order of things, and now I had this report that led me to this decision, but I could also have, for example, here, I come out of here, which makes me come out of here, which makes the car repaired milestone achieved, but I'm missing a report, the roadside assistance report. Once I get that report, then I can close my case, and the case is closed. I can pop out of this roadside assistance case and come and complete my customer support process. So what I've done is I've clearly specified how we deal in terms of standard way of dealing with customer support requests. I've clearly specified how to handle the context that is quite emergent of roadside assistance. I've clearly specified how we make decisions in a way that is simple for business user to capture themselves. This is something business user can and do all the time, specify these models, and provide this to IT as a very clear specification to be either implemented in an application or executed in a middleware platform within the organization. Okay, So what's the value proposition of the Triple Crown? Reach faster agreement between the as-is and the to-be of the operation in a very unambiguous way. Encourage participation by everybody through the graphic expression of notions that are simple for business users. Facilitate the analysis and the improvement of operations. Creates a library of process, case, and business decision that can be reused within the organization. Now, another big value of this is that unambiguous format of modeling process, we can interchange that. These are standard model, but they're also standard file format. I can take a BPMN file and put it in another tool, and they would readily have exactly the same model with the same notion, the same behavior. In fact, I'm the chair of the BPMN Model Interchange Working Group, and we're planning, again, we do it once a year. This December, 10th of December, we're going to do another demo in Seattle at the OMG meeting there, and we have up to now 11 vendors that will participate, and what we'll do is we'll create a process model, a BPMN model, iteratively, from tool to tool to tool to tool to eventually execute it, to show how this is a standard interchange format. Now, my personal perspective is that the biggest value you get from these standards is this last one. It's readily transferable skills. There exists a lot of training on BPMN, a lot of training on CMMN and DMN. Once you're analysts that capture your process, and you've probably lived it because everybody's got in their organization PowerPoints or diagrams with little clouds and little bus and little cars and things that's supposed to explain how we do things in the organization. And then the person that drew that left, and nobody knows what the little cloud means and what the little car meant there. So with BPMN, CMMN, and DMN, those are transferable skills. When somebody leaves the organization, you can hire another person that knows BPMN, and they will readily be able to understand your process. They may not have the specific subject matter expertise of your organization, but they'll understand what that diagram is saying. And that's very powerful and very important. Means to an end, there's no solution. Basically, when to use BPMN, CMMN, or DMN, you can use DMN in just about every context. BPMN is better in variable and unpredictable situation, and CMMN is better in more emergent situation. It is possible to do everything in BPMN. It gets messy. It is possible to do everything in CMMN. It gets messy. So you have to learn to use the proper language for the proper situation. Very quickly, I'm trying to leave time for questions. BPMN is about processes, CMMN is about case, DMN about decision. The first class citizen in BPMN are activities. In CMMN, they're events. In DMN, they're the rules. BPMN is about a transition of activity. CMMN is about events in a context. DMN is about applying rules. BPMN use data object within its context. Data in context of CMMN means that in CMMN we're dealing with information. Information that is applied is knowledge, so DMN provides us knowledge. BPMN is procedural, CMMN is declarative, DMN is functional, and they have token, event, condition, action, semantic, and first order logic semantic. A little bit of best practice quickly. If you're in BPMN and you have a chunk of your BPMN diagram that has a lot of gateways, draw a lasso around those gateways, collapse this into one decision activity, and define this logic in DMN. If you're in BPMN and you have a lot of events in your diagram, and more specifically around one or a few particular activities, you have to put about 12 boundary events, because while we're doing this, all kinds of things can go wrong. Take this, put a case there, and manage it with a case. If you even think you need an ad hoc task in BPMN or an ad hoc sub-process, don't go there, use CMMN. In fact, while we wrote BPMN some 20 years ago now, the ad hoc task was put there as a placeholder for future work that we knew we had to address. We just didn't know at the time how to address it. And CMMN is the answer to that. And similarly, if you're in CMMN and you find that you're writing, as soon as this task complete, if this task complete, then no condition, do this task, and you change your activity in CMMN, well, you're basically prescribing how things should be done, and you should do it with a BPMN process. There's free templates in Visio. Visio offers free templates for BPMN, CMMN, and DMN now. Well, at Trizatec we offer some too, but if you use Microsoft Visio, there's free templates from Microsoft in there. And you can also go and do a trial of our tool or come and ask questions at the booth.